Hello folks, this is Steve AB4L. I've got a new computer in the other room that I'm rendering stuff on instead of doing it on this machine. So I can play around and entertain you. Now you know nothing in this episode is a promotion nor is it a recommendation. You know, I was looking at slashdot.org. You know, it's one of my favorite places and Bleeping Computer, but nothing that interesting. So a moment ago, I just decided to look around. Now, I made an episode yesterday and I was playing around with the .eus, and one of the ones I tried out, one was the New York Times. Today's paper. So I was just back here a moment ago just to see what the story headlines are. Now, the point of this is I'm going to show you how many memories there are of a lot of different kinds from my journey through life. So I'm scrolling down. Russia attacks open a new front in Ukraine. Oh, wait a minute, here's the one. They shot at us all. Burkina Faso, accused of massacring civilians. Now you know where that is, right? It's a country. You know where it is, right? Right? Yeah, it's in Africa. You know what the name used to be, right? I know, Upper Volta, but it's not called that anymore. Why would I remember? I've never been there. And to my recollection, I've never known anybody from Burkina Faso. Witnesses and human rights groups claim the West African country's military killed more than 220 people, including women and children. You know, there's a big deal going about Hamas and Israel. It's the headlines, it's everywhere. Why isn't this a headline everywhere? Including women and children in February. Oh, it's old news. It was neither a mistake nor a one-off, they say. What kind of connection could I have with this country? See, it's north of Ghana. Can you see that? It's north of Ghana. What's the majority language in Ghana? What's the name of it? Ga. How do I know that? See, I'm going to show you how it's all wrapped up in my mind. How do I know that? When I was hitchhiking across North Africa in 1966, I met an American in Tunisia who had just recently finished his stint in the Peace Corps. I don't even know if they still have a Peace Corps in Ghana. And he was in the youth hostel, and I spent the evening talking with him. And one of the things I remember him telling me was that the major language spoken in Ghana is named Ga. So I've never been to Ghana. Have I ever known somebody from Ghana? Yes. But we're interested in what was Burkina Faso. Well, there's a picture. Let's see if there's any other images. In Burkina Faso, Islamist extremism can make it dangerous to dance. Washington Post, May 4th, 2024. In the village, it's too dangerous to dance, but a bigger stage awaited. In Burkina Faso, a Western African nation facing Islamist extremism, a national arts festival attracted troops from even the hardest. So they're saying that they were celebrating. The musicians and dancers traveled in a military. First time reading this. I'll explain to you why it attracted my attention in a minute. I'm updating myself. The musicians and dancers traveled in a military convoy to reach the competition, moving in armored cars with soldiers at the ready through parts of the country where Islamist extremists have banned their violins, drums, and dance moves. They're probably saying that the women are not covering their faces, let alone their bodies. There was a dancer whose close friend had been killed for listening to a radio while he farmed. A violinist who is no longer dared to play at the marriages and baptisms in the villages where he used to make his living. A young dancer who could no longer go to concerts with her friends in neighboring villages. The traditional dance troupe members had journeyed from Burkina Faso's Sahel administrative region. Sahel, my guess, in that country would be in the northern part of the country adjacent to the Sahel desert between Algeria, Chad, and where they are. Shall we look at the map? I didn't look. Oh, wait a minute. You did know you see Algeria there? I traveled across North Africa. You notice how thick the roads are up in the north and they show green? And you notice there's only a couple of roads here and a couple of roads here, and then you're down to Mali and Niger and Chad and Mauritania, and there's only a couple of roads that go through these gigantic countries. Why would that be? And so where do I say the province of Sahel is? This area here where you see the names of these countries, that's a desert. It's called the Sahel. Did you know that? This stuff that they're describing about the Islamists, it sounds an awful lot like what's happening in this part of Nigeria the last 5 or more years against the Christians. Let me see if it'll give us any. Nord region, that's French. Does that suggest that there used to be French in there? France. Sahel Reserve. Oh, how did I guess about that? Oh, the Sahel region. Oh, wait a minute, there it is. What did I say? I said it would be the northernmost part of the country bordering on the Sahel Desert. How do I know that stuff? Let's explore a little bit more. How about images? Well, some places look like they're Burkina Faso, this fits right in. Food, water, and healthcare are scarce. So there are a few large cities. But if you look at the background here, you can see that it's pretty barren. Burkina Faso's crisis explained 5 things to know in 2022. Oh, wait a minute. Do you notice what the background looks like? You see these adobe buildings, and you notice there's no grass? Some parts of it in the south look like they're semi-tropical, but you have sparse trees, but there's no grass here. Some of the population lives out in the countryside in thatched roofs. And all right, this is mud bricks. I'm giving you a feeling for the country. Have I ever been there? No. Do you notice how they're dressed and covered? These people in the village don't look like the kind that were going to the capital for the dance and music. I'm not picking on them. I'm just trying to get back. Pardon me. I want to get back to the map. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a good one. What do you think about the landscape? Do you think that's in the northern part of the country? Do you think those greener ones are in the southern part of the country? I do. Why do I even know about this country? Do you remember what I told you about meeting a Peace Corps person, a guy who had just finished doing about 2 years in Ghana in 1966? Let's fast forward to the early 1980s. I was in graduate school. There was a nice young lady in the department, also a student, who had recently returned from Upper Volta, otherwise known as Burkina Faso. They had just changed the name recently, where she had served for almost 2 years in the Peace Corps. I changed it to Burkina Faso breeding beans. I've never done this search before, and I'll explain why I did it. You saw, I have never done this before. So Burkina Faso, and I just said breeding beans. TrueLoveSeeds.com. Haricot Rouge, this would be, I don't know. Du Burkina Faso Southern Pea. Now, haricot, I would assume was French for carrot, but it could be that, I took 3 years of high school French, and that was a long time ago. Oh, that's it, perfect. Haricot Rouge, red beans, du Burkina Faso, Southern Pea. And then it names it. And you can buy a packet of them for $5. Below standard germination, this fits right in. Below standard germination, 42%. However, in addition, there are currently 52% dormant seeds, so you're likely to get closer to 94% to germinate by the time you plant them. This beautiful African heirloom from Burkina Faso, West Africa, laughs at the heat and poor soils and produces plentiful in drought and wet conditions, probably especially in the north of that country. Red seeds, a bit larger than our Sea Island red peas, taste great as dried beans. Alternative, and it goes on to say, West Africa is where this species is most widely grown and is likely where this species was first domesticated. From there it traveled the world, nourishing the African diaspora and beyond. Now, why did I say this was perfect? All I said was breeding beans. The young gal, who was also a graduate student in the department with me, and who used to drive a, what's the Swedish car? Volvo. She had an old Volvo. I tried to help her tune it up. I had worked with my brother in his foreign car repair shop. At least I knew something. So you get to talking, and she had just recently returned from this place. What did she do there for almost 2 years? She was like an oh, I didn't say. My degrees are in agriculture. Yeah, I'm an Aggie. We were in an agronomy department, both of us. Does that fit in with the beans? What did she do with just a bachelor's degree? She was there to get a master's degree. What did she do in the Peace Corps in this country? She spent almost 2 years out in the countryside collecting local varieties of things like this bean. And then she had, with the aid money from the United States government, she had local people, mostly women, helping her plant them out, grow them up, and do the cross-fertilization. And then she would do, as the breeder, the selection. The one person that she had as a steady employee was a local male from the village, and they had a almost semi-underground shed where they stored all of the experimental bean collections and crosses and all of that, so that they could then plant them out in field trials the next season. And she had a local guy who was a regular employee taking care of all that stuff in the storage thing, take care of the beans in the bags and labeling them and all that kind of stuff. And then, when it came the end and she was going to leave, come back to the States and go to school, she went into that storage semi-shed partially in the ground to keep it cool and not too dry, to do an inventory. And as she began going through all those bean crosses that would be passed on to the next person who would come to continue the project, she found that the bags were full of trash and dirt and clay, dry clay particles. So then she asked her assistant that had worked with her for over a year, "What is this?" And at first he didn't want to answer, but she said, "Do you want me to call the police?" And so he said, To feed my family, I was selling the beans in the marketplace behind your back. Destroying 2 years' worth of progress in agricultural breeding for the benefit of the people in the village and the region. If you want to know what it's like in those countries, I've just told you. The idea that he might have been working for a higher purpose apparently didn't even register. It was how much could he steal. Do you remember the pictures I showed you of what the villages look like outside of the capital city? No, I've never been to that country, and no, I've never known anybody from that country, but yes, I have known a gal who spent 2 years there. So when I read something like this and it says, Burkina Faso accused of massacring civilians, you mean in countries where people are scratching to even live, that they'll go and shoot up other people just to take their beans because they don't have any money to buy them? Or something like that. You see, when I read a headline like this, and then I think about that story and what kind of motivation and what kind of value system that worker assistant might have had, go read the last 20 and 30 years history of all of the countries in West Africa. Especially northwestern Nigeria, the adjacent country, almost adjacent country. Steve AB40, just reminiscing a little bit, saying see you in 73.